All right, welcome back to On Texas Football, special live edition of On Texas Football. This is a live edition of the recruiting breakdown, which we have on the channel every Tuesday, but it will be live for the month of June as we are in official visit season, the first big official visit weekend for Texas. It's coming up this weekend in a matter of days. We'll get to it. We'll run down the big headlines and take your questions. Whatever you got, line it up in the chat, super chats, as always. Anytime we do a live here at On Texas Football, super chats jump to the front of the line. I'm Jeff Howe, joined by Jerry Hamilton and Hank South. Jerry, let's go ahead and get started with kind of one of the big ticket items. Easton Royal, I think this was, if you've been paying attention on Texas football, this was more of a confirmation than a revelation. He's canceled a couple of visits. Really looks like it's down to 3 schools. Still committed to Texas. Texas still in it. But who's no longer in it for Easton Royal, Jerry?
Yeah, Tennessee and Ole Miss. And look, Easton has been really upfront about this recruiting process, and I'm such a fan of the way he's handled it. He told us he was going to take all the spring visits, which included Ole Miss and Tennessee, but never once did anybody from On Texas Football, and I went by the school twice, and just all of our sources, Hank, myself, Jordan, and CJ, who's been by Brother Martin before as well, did any of us think Ole Miss or Tennessee was a threat here? Tennessee scheme-wise wasn't going to have a chance, and Ole Miss, you know, they weren't going to have a chance to actually win this recruitment. So Tennessee and Ole Miss are now out, and it's down to the 3, which we said it was the whole time. And it's Texas with the commitment, and they're by far the leader. Florida, I still believe, is number 2. And LSU came into the official visit process number 3, and I think they knew that, by the way. And he was on campus at LSU last weekend. But the news here is that no OVs to Tennessee or Ole Miss. And this is now officially down to where we said it was going to be the whole time. And now it comes down to that Florida OV, the June 12th through 14th, Texas the 19th through 21st. It'll be on the campus the same weekend as Monchun Sales. Some other guys, that's down the line in June for us, Hank. But this one's fallen into place. And this one's it's been easy to see how it fall into place because Easton's been so upfront and transparent about his process. So he's been a fun guy to cover leading into this first Texas OV weekend, which has a number of guys coming in.
Yeah, Hank, let's go ahead and talk about the OV weekend. Again, this is the first big weekend of visits for Texas. That's we talked about on the channel. We talked targets were elsewhere last weekend. Obviously, Jerry mentioned Easton Royal making a visit to LSU. But Hank, as we look at, and Matthew's got our graphic ready. Thank you, Matthew. Hank, as we look at visitors coming in this weekend, what's top of mind for you?
Yeah, it's a good kickoff weekend for the month of June for Texas. I look at it, and top of mind is obviously defensive side of the ball. Marcus Fakato, I think that's one of your biggest names you're bringing back. Obviously took that big multi-day visit in April. He's also been on campus back for a game against Texas A&M in November. He'll be back, and what's important about this is he was at Ohio State this past weekend and then Georgia. And so this is Texas's chance to, kind of face its top competition on kind of their last in-person crack before he makes a commitment. So Marcus Fakato, one of their top defensive line targets, kind of their Lance Jackson type they're recruiting in this class. We've been pretty consistent on believing it's Ohio State is the top competition. They're kind of using that JT Tuimolo role for him. And obviously, I think he's helping out in that recruitment as well. And we saw the big greeting he got at the Columbus airport when he took his official visit. I'll be curious to see if Texas does anything like that. But beyond him, his teammates.
You mean outside of me and you?
Right, I know, right? With our airport welcome contingent. Kasai Curry, Fakato's teammate, big-time defensive line target, a kid that named Texas his leader earlier this spring. He's obviously blown up. He's gained more traction on the recruiting front. So I'm not sure he would say that right now, but Texas certainly in his top group. And then a couple of commitments or a couple of defensive commitments in Derwin Fields and Cameron Hall. Cam Hall we just talked to on Sunday. He was on campus watching his cousin, who's a 2028 defensive lineman, elite, 5-star type defensive lineman, and Kellen Hall from Kentucky. Cameron Hall shut down his recruitment last week. He was considering visiting SMU, TCU, but he said, "Nah, I know where I want to be," and he's happy with Texas. So you got to like that when you're talking about your commitments. But now, Jerry, you've got some thoughts on Jabarius Garor, who I think maybe the one we're watching closest this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a huge defensive weekend. I mean, that's pretty obviously all the guys on offense are committed. And Jeremiah Douglas I want to hit on him. We have a maybe next to him because he said he shut down his recruitment after the Vanderbilt visit. But Texas remains in contact. They'd still like to get him on campus. So that offensive group is smaller and it's committed guys. Defense is where this weekend is, and for Texas. And look, Jabarius Garor is very interesting because when I went by the school in mid-May, right before their spring game, which Jason Taylor from Miami and Lyle Clark were both at, not just my feel from that, but talking to multiple people around there, it was Texas in Miami with Texas considered the favorite. Miami's no longer in contention. He was at Auburn last weekend, so it's Texas, it's Auburn, it's Georgia, FSU, and I think that's your order. But he's not announcing going into these official visits, let me say, because anything can happen. And he right now says he's not announcing until July 4th. And look, this is a guy that Texas absolutely loves as a pass rusher. He's got a ton of sacks in the last 2 years. Looked really good in the spring game. Has great been, but this is one that Texas has been all in on for a while. His visit in April was a really good one from an academic and football standpoint. I think academics are a factor here in this recruitment. And it's why another reason why we had Texas and Miami as his top two, and then Miami's now been removed. But big weekend here for pass rushers. Obviously, Derwin Fields committed, but LSU and Ole Miss still coming after him. He may take OVs there. In Cam Hall obviously shut it down, but huge at edge, then huge in the secondary, guys. I mean, I'm going to let Hank address linebackers, but DBs. I mean, Junior Tuopo. Myself, Jordan. We both heard that Texas is the favorite there. He was at Oregon last weekend. This is the number one safety on the board for Texas. Texas this weekend, Auburn the 12th through 14th, and Alabama the 19th through 21st. Obviously, the Tagovailoa family is impactful in this recruitment. That obviously would help Alabama, and we do think right now it could come down to Texas and Alabama. But in the NIL day and age, I'll continue to be a broken record. We're not going to sit here and say no, an Oregon doesn't have a chance, but we do think Texas and Alabama is probably where this one's headed. Then John Meredith coming off the A&M visit. All these guys are going to have great visits, these top 5-star guys. I mean, when's the last time you heard about a 5-star not having a good visit, official visit somewhere? Very few and far between. He had a great OV to A&M. Now it's Texas time to serve that ball across the net this weekend and hit that return shot. So we still feel good about Texas' chances. But, look, it's a very competitive recruitment. The interesting thing will be he goes to OT Nationals next weekend after this weekend at Texas. Will he actually take that 19th to 21st visit somewhere? And then Trenton Blaylock, Texas quietly been doing very well with him. Yes, his brother's a second-team running back at Oklahoma, but Texas has put a lot of work in on this recruitment. So this is a big visit weekend for Blaylock. But DBs, really big. Edge players, really big. Defensive line, really big. And then, Hank, we're going to take your questions in a second. Obviously, we're getting you guys started. We're going over this OV list. But then, Hank, linebackers too. I mean, with Jaden Nelson and Toa Satele.
Yeah, Jaden Nelson, obviously Texas Tech commit. He was at the opening regional 2 weekends ago in Dallas and left before doing any interviews. So I'm kind of curious to see how Texas Tech commitments approach OV weekends this year. If Texas Tech tries to say, hey, you're not coming in, or you can't go on those visits. Obviously, we've seen Jalen Brewster take visits. They haven't stopped him. Yeah. Jaden Nelson, by all accounts, we believe he's still going to be on campus. He's a guy that Texas has maintained their pursuit of. The Sark went to see him earlier this year. The Texas staff went in to see him this spring again, posted a picture with them. And so that's one we're watching closely. Obviously, Jordan's brought up the note that his stepbrother, half-brother is enrolling at Texas Tech. That's probably playing a factor into his recruitment. How much, we'll see. But that visit's still on the books. Multiple linebacker, guy who can play edge, inside, rush the passer, guy that Texas really likes and has continued to try to change his mind off of Texas Tech. A guy that's not committed anywhere is Toa Satele. And this one's kind of interesting because he's a quiet kid. He's out in Hawaii. He's been to Austin already this year. He took a couple days in the spring with members of his family, and he's coming back this weekend. And this is a recruitment. It has all the teams you would kind of expect for Toa Satele. Texas, Cal with Tosh Lupoy, obviously now the head coach in Berkeley. Notre Dame and Oregon, I believe, are his top 4 schools. And so we'll see where that one goes. But both these guys kind of fit the same mold of what Texas is looking at in that linebacker position, versatile players, long, really strong kids. So we'll see how they go. I don't really have a great feel on Satele in terms of where he's leaning. Texas has been a school that's been mentioned a bunch this spring, but again, he's got these OV slates. He's in Hawaii, so it's always kind of fully hard to gauge this. But I will say this could be a Johnny Nansen, signature win in his time on this staff. We haven't seen him pull anyone from Hawaii just yet, and that's kind of been, that's been his specialty in terms of where he's recruited well throughout his career. So if he gets this one done, that'd be a pretty big win for Texas to pair up with Cade Haug already in the class.
All right, good stuff, Hank. We'll get to your questions. If you got questions on recruiting, line it up in the chat. We'll get to it. Super chats, as always, jump to the front of the line. But before we do that, Jerry, we need to thank our long-running sponsor here on the Recruiting Breakdown and give a shout-out to our good friend Mark Saunders.
Yeah, when it comes to protecting all your stuff, wouldn't it be great to have one place that protects it all? Well, and Texas football has some great news. That is Texas All-State agent Mark Saunders. He serves the Austin and Round Rock area and the entire state of Texas. That means he's the only insurance agent you'll need. Everything from your home, car, boat, to your motorcycle, RV, and ATV. Call Texas All-State agent Mark Saunders' office today, 512-218-8571. Here's the On Texas Football Guarantee. With over 35 years of experience, you'll be in great hands with Texas alum Mark Saunders. So do what so many other On Texas Football family members have done the last couple of years. That's give Mark Saunders' office a call today, 512-218-8571.
All right, thank you, Jerry. Let's go ahead and get to the questions. Jerry, Hank, whichever one of you guys wants to take it, feel free. Peter DeGreat and Living Rent Free in UT both have the same kind of questions in the same vein. Peter DeGreat says, any updates on Landon Williams-Callis? Is Texas still in it? And then Living Rent Free in UT wants to know, who is the number 2 running back option this recruiting class, or will that need to be filled in the portal?
So Texas has 2 official visitors right now. Noah Roberts, the commitment, will be here this weekend, but outside of him, Sherrod Baker still on the OV list for next week, and we'll see if he makes it in. Landon Williams-Callis, who somebody asked about, is June 19th through 24th. I think Texas obviously would take Landon Williams-Callis. That doesn't mean they can get him. He is the number 1 running back on the board at A&M. Oregon's very much in it where he was at last week, and those are considered the top 2 with everybody else playing catch-up. But I will say this, Steve Sarkisian is personally involved in that recruitment, has been since a January school visit. So we'll see which way it goes. In my visit to Richmond Randall earlier in the spring, the kind of the feeling I got around there, obviously his cousin is kind of helping him run this recruiting process, Michael Lewis, who played at Colorado and then the NFL as a Pro Bowl, a really good player. He has his cousins, Jaquiz Rogers, who played in the NFL, has been through this. So he has some really good people around him to help him navigate through this process. But when I left Richmond Randall that day, I thought it probably would come down to in-state schools, A&M or Texas, whichever one had the best situation for him as a running back. But I do think Oregon's definitely in the mix there.
Hank, any thoughts on running back? Jerry mentioned Sherrod Baker. We'll see if he makes the visit. But any other thoughts on what Texas would do to pair someone with Noah Roberts in this class?
Yeah, I'll be curious if Sherrod Baker even makes the visit. I'm not sure he would flip even if he did. Someone asked this in our chat on OTF this morning in our all-day staff chat. I think, it's either Landon Williams-Callis, if they can pull that off. I think it could be, but beyond that, I think it would either be a senior eval like we saw with Jet Walker last year, or the portal, depending on the need and who's coming back into 2027. But luckily for Texas, they got Noah Roberts in the fold earlier in the spring. Not as much of a pressure kind of position for them to really address this summer, unless that they can win over Landon Williams-Callis.
Yep. Hank, I'll give this next question to you since you were talking about linebackers. Oregon insiders think Toa Satele is trending there. Where do we go at linebacker if we strike out there? Random one wants to know. And now that Joakim Gouda is off the board after his commitment to Georgia.
Yeah, that's a good point on Joakim Gouda. It's been trending Georgia late, but Texas definitely took a swing there to get him. There's a few options. I think one guy that has a lot of interest in Texas and vice versa is Izzy Hammonds out of Oklahoma. That's a guy that's going to OV June 19th through 21st, I believe. I think Oklahoma State and Utah are the top competition there for him. And so Texas is going to try to win out on that one that weekend, and as well as Micaiah Allen, another guy that kind of fits that same Toa Satele build in terms of measurement, size, ability. So those are the two guys I would note. Obviously, Cade Haug's committed. I don't know if am I missing somebody, Jerry, or would you agree that those two are kind of the main guys beyond Satele this weekend?
When you put them into positions at the linebacker spot, it was two guys as that kind of A-B gap thumper, and that was Gouda, who had been a Georgia lean, but Texas did a good job making that a fight for a while. And then it's Micaiah Allen out of Don Bosco Prep, who was at A&M last weekend. And we could easily see a Don Bosco Prep kid out of Ramsey, New Jersey, come down to Texas versus Texas A&M as an inside linebacker. I could see that. He visits June 19th through 21st. Then when you get to that outside, that overhang position, that's a little different, obviously, with the guys Texas is recruiting. Jaden Nelson, Izzy Hammonds there. Satele kind of stands alone at linebacker right now positionally. What I think will be interesting there is I'm not one that just pushes Cal away in these recruitments anymore. Now Tosh Lupoy is at Cal. He can compete with Oregon. I mean, where was he? Oregon. I mean, he can compete with anybody nationally in recruiting. He makes Cal a factor. And let's see what happens with Satele, because look, Notre Dame has felt confident early on in that recruitment. I'm not saying they do now, but there's been a lot of people that think they have a shot at this. And so he was at Oregon last weekend, obviously at Texas this weekend. Then he's got Notre Dame. Then he's got Cal. I believe Notre Dame's a midweek visit. Obviously, when you're from Hawaii, you're not going to be traveling back and forth all the time. You're going to set up some visits, going to have to be a midweek visit, and we'll see where it goes from there. But linebacker will be interesting to see how it all unfolds for Texas. I think that's a position, honestly, that we could see a senior high school kid emerge as well.
Yeah, and what's interesting about Cal, just to mention on Toa Satele, and the same thing with Izzy Hammonds, when you look at Oklahoma State and Utah being the main competition, it's like, oh, well, you think Texas can beat those teams out. But, in this NIL era, the rev share era, when you have that being your top guy, you can probably allocate more NIL share to certain players as opposed to what another school would do. So you can't count them out outside of just the fact that Lupoy is a good recruiter and obviously he's built his career as a linebackers coach as well.
Yeah, Jerry, you mentioned senior eval. Rocky Cummings was a late eval for the staff, and based on the returns we heard from spring practice, that's worked out pretty good so far. Jerry, I'll go back to you on this one. Yes, OU Sucks says, hey, guys, looking at the long list of defensive prospects, how do Muschamp and his powerful coaching staff influence defensive recruiting? Jerry, we talked about it, and this isn't a knock on PK. It's just he and Will Muschamp handle recruiting totally different. PK was more in the office and would spot recruit. Will Muschamp, Jerry, it amazes me as far as he's gone in his college coaching career. He's still, at his core, is a guy that wants to be out on the road, making the in-person evals, trying to connect that way, get in front of the high school coaches. Like that's even this far into his career, he still wants to do that part of it.
Think just about two things he did in the spring as a D coordinator in recruiting. He was out in SoCal for 2.5 days as part of the recruitment of Marcus Fakato and Cassie Curry. So he spent 2+ days in SoCal. And then he made the trip to Choctaw, Oklahoma, and he was there all day, essentially 3+ hours, to make sure Izzy Hammonds, Israel Hammonds, who I think is a stud prospect, understands how bad Texas wants him. Because I think there were some – I think the other programs at Oklahoma State and the Utah were saying, hey, where are you on Texas board? You're our top guy. Well, Muschamp said, all right. He shows up at Choctaw and he spends 3 hours there. He's putting in a ton of time on the road as a defensive coordinator, as much as any defensive coordinator. And he's been up to see Meredith as much as possible. He's been up to see guys that they probably won't even get. I mean, he's been to Cedar Hill multiple times to see Jalen Brewster, and then the kid they have a little interest in there, Jalen Price, who's just decommitted from Baylor. So Muschamp's making his mark in recruiting. He has been to see all the guys. He strongly believes no matter where a guy is ranked, he wants to eval that guy in person. One in-person workout to help make that final decision for this defensive staff. They have to evaluate in person. This is not tape evaluation and then take a kid. So if that's the avenue you take in recruiting, Will Muschamp's going to be on the road and be a big part of it.
Anything to add there, Hank? I know we talked about Johnny Nansen earlier. You mentioned he typically recruited more of the West Coast recruits to Hawaii, but I'm working on a piece right now over at ontexasfootball.com for later today, and it's not a recruiting, it's a team piece, but getting Blake Gideon back on the staff, Hank, I think that was key because Blake Gideon speaks Muschamp. He's been around him for so long that I think whether it's recruiting needs or relaying to that safety room, hey, it might be hard to hear through the noise, but here's really what he wants you to understand. I just think getting Blake Gideon back is a huge, huge piece of this. And the fact that, the Pete Jenkins connection with Kenny Baker, there's just a lot of synergy in that defensive staff room.
Yeah, it's really come together, and it's. I'm glad you mentioned Blake Gideon. We were just at the elite camp on Sunday, and one of the guys, and I wrote the story on Texas Football, it's up right now, James Foster, who's going to be one of the top he already is one of the top defensive backs in the country, the class of 2028 from Lancaster. Blake Gideon is leading the charge in that recruitment for Texas, and in my opinion, probably has Texas in pole position for him.
Yeah.
He's a consensus top 25 player. But we spoke to him, or CJ and I spoke to him when he was leaving, and asked him about. He was talking about Blake Gideon back in January, saying that's the reason I'm looking at Texas. And then again, when we're seeing him in June after he works out, he mentioned his humility. But one thing he said that caught me and CJ's attention was he likes the versatility aspect of James Foster and his recruiting pitch. He said, you don't come to Texas to play a position, you come to Texas to play defense. And I know, obviously there are some guys you can't slot a 300-pounder at safety, but you get the point he was making, and the fact that, they're going to coach these guys up to be able to kind of, do several different things and help kind of reach their full potential as a player. So but like you said, he speaks Muschamp. That was a guy that Muschamp immediately looked to add once he came back to Texas back from Georgia Tech. And he's been a big plus in the recruiting aspect of everything, I'm sure, on the field as well.
Jerry King Me 3 has a couple of questions. The first one, I just want to get this out there. He said, when are Texas top 2 OT targets doing their OVs? Jerry, we talk a lot about Ismail Kamara, and he's made noise recently with the fact that he's not going to take official visits. But Jerry, it seems like Kyle Flood offered Brian Swanson like the minute he got to Texas. Like, it seems like he's been on the radar for years. I just don't think people need to lose sight of that.
No, Brian Swanson's a very talented player. He was the first offensive lineman in this cycle Texas offered way back in 2024, June 1st. He will be at Texas June 12th through 14th. He was at OU last week, and he's at SMU this weekend. He has a top 8. I know in LSU, some people are trying to get him on campus after Texas, but as of right now, starting the OV process, this was Texas' big lead over SMU and over Oklahoma. We'll see if he goes beyond the Texas visit June 12th through 14th. On Kamara, we'll have to wait and see, does he actually do OVs? He said, I'm not doing OVs. Then he went to SMU yesterday unofficially. So he could show up on campuses, but it may not be OVs. So we'll see if he saves OVs for the season or if he takes OVs at all. So that's it. That's where we're coming from on the top 2 offensive tackles right now.
Hank, I'll start with you with King Me 3's other question. Said over under Texas has 15 commitments by the end of August.
Yeah, that's an easy over. They're at 11 right now. They could be 12 or 13 by the end of this week, depending on what Bryson Thrower does. We haven't even mentioned him yet. Obviously, John Meredith, big visit this week, and Texas would love to wrap that up if they could this weekend. They'll easily have over 15. I would probably put it more at 20 as the over-under question. What do you think, Jerry?
Yeah, that's where I was going. If it's not 15 by August, things have gone horrifically bad. By the way, I'm just going to put that out there, no BS. If they're at 14 by mid-August, things have not gone well. I would lean to I'd put the number at 20 and a half.
Yeah.
I'm thinking 20 and a half. So in the chat, put your numbers, put your bets on that. I could see Texas, if things go well for Texas, I could see them being 22 by that time. I could see them doubling this class number, but they have to get there. These are all real recruitments. So we'll see. But I would say put that number at 20 and a half, and then you guys make your bets on that one.
Jerry, I'll go to you for this, and Hank, obviously I want your opinion on this too, but Kids7187 asks, how does Marcus Flacco compare to Lance Jackson at the same stage?
He doesn't throw 95 off the mound. Lance Jackson's super athletic as just an athlete. I don't know if Fakato would put up the testing numbers that Lance Jackson would. I think Fakato, the one thing I love about him is he's lost 30 pounds on his own.
Yeah.
I think that's amazing for a kid his age, right?
Yeah.
So I think Lance Jackson probably would not probably would if you took him to a combine, he's going to put up the more impressive testing numbers. I think Fakato has real playing strength, though, is what he has. I think this guy is and there's a reason Georgia, Ohio State, Texas, Oregon, and Notre Dame. I mean, just think about those 5 schools, because what can he do? He can play the run against anybody, anytime. So if you said, okay, where is Fakato ahead of Lance Jackson? It may be playing strength against the run in a major conference. I think Lance Jackson is more athletic as a whole. So I think they're a little bit different prospects, but Fakato is going to be really hard to run against guys as he continues to mature as a player and add strength.
All right. Thank you, Jerry. Jerry, yes, OU sucks. Wants to know, said, hey, Jerry, how about an I-30, I-20 prospect update?
I-30, I-20. Okay. Yeah, I mean, look, we went over Brian Swanson. We'll see. I think Texas is still recruiting Adrian Redmond out of the Soto, committed to Texas Tech. Right now, we don't believe he's going to make an OV, but Texas will stay on him in recruiting. We do believe that. I-30, what is technically we need to talk about is Forney's not technically off of I-30, but you can shoot down from I-30 to get there. So we'll bring up Bryson Thrower now. Bryson Thrower announcing June 6th. Still looks good for Texas. Texas, Illinois are your 2. I think Chris Jackson's done a great job in this recruitment because when I was by there in the spring, I watched Thrower in a track practice. And by the way, I think the guy's he's underrated. He's got a chance to be a really good player. The thought was it was Texas and Illinois. He was going to Illinois on an OV that weekend. Then A&M made a big push. And that OV date initially came out in mid-July. A&M was the only school that knew about that. Chris Jackson went in home later that day. I think Texas has done a really good job in this recruitment. I think Chris Jackson's done a very solid job in this recruitment and has Texas in the position to win it on June 6th. We'll see. We always wait to see what a player announces. But I think we'd all be a little surprised if it wasn't Texas at this point.
Yeah. Anything to add on Bryson Thrower, Hank?
No, I mean, I agree with Jerry. I think Texas has that's been the one consistent in his recruitment and his connection with Chris Jackson. I think they're going to win out just with everything with his timeline, with his OV being scheduled for the following weekend. I think this just points to Texas come June 6th. But again, they got to get it over the finish line. And I think also another positive you can look at if you're looking at Texas, he originally was going to announce on July 17th.
Yeah.
He's moved that up to June 6th. So I think that favors Texas as well.
Random one getting a question in here before we wind this down. Says, what's the latest on the interior D-line recruiting? Is Mitchell Turner still expected in?
Mitchell Turner is scheduled to be in next week in the 12th through 14th, not this weekend, next week. And he's at LSU now after going to Alabama. He did not commit to Alabama. He's at LSU. I think if he makes that OV to Texas, which he's scheduled to and expected to, it gets very interesting. Also scheduled to be there that same weekend, June 12th through 14th, is Ben Javarius Shoemaker, the Ole Miss commit, who I think is tremendous football prospect. He's scheduled to be on campus the 12th through 14th. We also have on the 19th through 21st, Florida weekend, Tyler Alexander and Jamar Thompson, who's out of West Boca. Jamar Thompson was on campus for an unofficial yesterday, maybe even going through today, expected back for an OV the 19th through 21st. So you got those guys. Obviously, Fakato he's in that Lance Jackson mold. He's going to play edge wherever he goes, but he's also going to be a third down interior pass rusher. I don't think there's any doubt about him, but he's more of an edge prospect. Then Texas is also Raiden Cook's coming in this weekend. He's a Houston commit. I think the tough thing there for the P4s is I think there's the other P4s, the bigger P4s is a U of H. We've heard U of H has a nice 2-year NIL type of possibility for Raiden Cook. I think that's where D-line recruiting gets very interesting because some of these guys, Texas also still has Jason Johnson on the books for the 19th through 21st. I'll let Hank address Amari Vickerson, because I know he had exchanged messages with him a few days ago. But is how many schools have multi-year deals. Okay, if you're a Houston, you attack with a multi-year deal versus the bigger P4 school, knowing the bigger P4 school won't attack with a multi-year deal with that same type of number, more than likely on some kids. So that's where D-line gets very interesting for me. I think Texas will fill 3 D-line spots. We'll see if they're all early, though.
Yeah, Hank, somebody did ask, I believe it was Living Rent Free in UT, asked about Amari Vickerson, the SMU commit, if he shut it down for good.
Yeah, no, he is not. I mean, okay, so you go back to mid-April. He looked like he was on the verge of flipping to Texas. He visited April 11th, was decked out in Texas gear. His whole family came with him. They were all wearing Texas gear. Didn't look like an SMU commit arriving on a visit. Told us after that visit, yeah, I'll be back next weekend for the final spring practice. Wasn't able to make that trip. There were some travel conflicts with his family. He also had visited SMU the day prior, so I think that also played in to not making that second visit. And after that point, I think Jerry and I both, this is SMU probably shut this down. They did whatever they needed to do, if they needed to, change his NIL deal or what. But it looked like Amari Vickerson was kind of fading in terms of chances for Texas. Until I reached out to him, I think about a week and a half ago. I said, hey, you still visiting Texas for that June 12th through 14th weekend? He said yes. So door's still a little bit ajar for him. Certainly a kid that there's a lot to like about him from a physical, athletic standpoint. His dad played in the NFL. His dad's a coach. He's a coach's son. You always, kind of perk your ears up to that. But I still think it's probably a pretty tall task to flip him. Back in the day, maybe SMU, you could change those kids' minds. SMU's got a war chest when it comes to NIL, and they're able to keep guys they want to keep, or even flip guys that they want to flip. So I'm not expecting anything to change with Amari Vickerson at this point, but we'll see what happens on that OV and see if Texas can get him thinking about it.
Hey, Jeff, I'm going to bring up one football question before we get out of here, because I know our time's running short. David Keith Williams, thanks for the questions as always, guys. This is not a recruiting question discussing 2027 recruits, but I've long questioned the long-term position of 2026 Texas recruit Kosiak Paul. Do you think he'll eventually move from weak side defensive end from linebacker? I think he's going to play both at Texas because he's been that impressive talking to people. Look, he's been one of the more impressive freshmen that was available, that had enrolled at Texas in January, is there for spring practice. That was all but one, by the way. To say he's impressed Texas defensive staff is an understatement. He is showing some real pass rushing characteristics, but he's also showing the ability to pick up a scheme fast and be able to play an off-ball linebacker on the inside. So I think that's a rare combination of a player, and I think that really impresses Texas. So we'll see where it goes, DK, but I think right now Texas likes him at both, but does see a guy that has the ability to develop into a very high-end pass rusher.
All right, good stuff, Jerry. Jerry, one more time before we get out of here, let's give a shout-out to our long-running sponsor of the Recruiting Breakdown. That's Mark Saunders.
Yeah, when it comes to protecting all your stuff, it'd be great to have one place that protects it all. Well, you got that guy, Texas All-State agent Mark Saunders. He serves the Austin and Round Rock area and the entire state of Texas. Everything from your home, car, boat, to motorcycle, RV, and ATV. Call Texas All-State agent Mark Saunders' office today, 512-218-8571. He's not just a Texas All-State agent. He's a Texas alum. Put all your insurance needs in his hands with his over 35 years of experience. 512-218-8571.
All right, good stuff, Jerry. Jerry, Hank, thank you guys for the knowledge, the intel, the expertise as always. Big thank you to Matthew behind the scenes producing it, doing the great job he does for us here at On Texas Football. Hey, if you're not a member over at OnTexasFootball.com, now is the time. If you want recruiting intel, you're not going to get any recruiting intel that's better than what our staff is putting up over at OnTexasFootball.com. For new subscribers, we've got a limited time offer, $3 for your first 3 months of access. Again, that big official visit weekend this week is coming up just in a couple of days. You're not going to want to miss any of the intel. Nobody in the Texas market is covering recruiting better, more in-depth than the staff at ontexasfootball.com. So again, new subscribers, take advantage of that limited time offer, $3 for your first 3 months of access over to ontexasfootball.com. Hey, before we're done, make sure you hit that like button. Make sure that you're subscribed to the On Texas Football YouTube channel. Make sure you got those notifications set so that way anytime we go live or drop a new video, you're not going to miss any of our Longhorn coverage or breaking news. CJ Vogel and I will be back here in a matter of hours on the Tuesday night live stream. If you got any questions or comments for Jerry, you can direct them either over to ontexasfootball.com. We've got our all-day staff chat thread going on, so it's our all-day AMA. You can get in there, ask us anything. And yes, I do mean anything, Jerry. Jerry, I think you answered a Gilligan's Island question earlier.
I did, yes. The answer was why not both?
Anything you guys want to know, you can ask the On Texas football staff, or Jerry will be back live here on the channel bright and early tomorrow morning for Coffee and Football to take your questions. So until then, for Jerry, for Hank, for Matthew, for the entire On Texas football staff, I'm Jeff Howe. Thank you so much for watching and listening in. Until next time, hook 'em.